All right, this is a 3.4 homework help if you need it. All right, so we're going to go through. I'll help you fill out some of the stuff to get you started. So a negative sign in front of a variable does not necessarily mean the value is negative. So let's look through some examples. When x is 5, all right, this right here just means opposite x. So if x is 5, what's the opposite of 5? Negative 5. So x is negative. So my opposite x is negative in this case. When x is negative 2, the opposite of negative 2 is 2. So my opposite x is positive in this case. All right? When x is negative 7, the opposite of negative 7 is 7. So my opposite of x in this case is also positive. All right? So we can always take the opposite of a negative, and when we do that, we end up with a positive. So since x is a variable, is it possible to tell whether the expression opposite x is positive or negative? Yes. Right? If you start with a negative, the opposite of a negative will be a positive. If you start with a positive, the opposite of a positive will be negative. And this is where we're going to kind of write down those rules. So the expression of opposite x should be read, of course, opposite. So this is opposite x. Opposite x. The value of opposite x is positive when the value of x is negative. So when my number is negative, the opposite of a negative number will be positive. The value of opposite x is negative when the value of x starts off to be positive. So the opposite of a positive number will be negative. The value of opposite a negative x is positive when the value of x is also positive. The value of opposite x is negative when the value of x is negative. All right, it gets a little tricky. All right, the value of opposite x is 0 when the value of x is also 0. So there's 3 possible meanings for negative x that we've been talking about. Here's a review. It can mean minus, subtract, it can mean negative, and it can also mean opposite. Okay, opposite. All right? It's a little confusing, but as you experience working with the opposite, a number, and doing the opposites, and 2 negatives make a positive kind of thing, you'll get better at it. Okay? So go ahead and flip your sheet. If at any time you need to rewind or pause, do that, okay? So again, all right, it says tell whether the statement is true or false. So let's look at that. Okay, here I got my x. There's no negative or opposite in front of it, so I'm going to write x. But if you notice, in front of my parentheses, I have a negative. I have a minus. So I have to do the opposite of everything inside. So that's going to be opposite of positive y and opposite of z. So does this match this? No. So this is going to be false. This does not equal that. X doesn't change, but there's a minus in front of y and z. So this would be negative y and positive z. All right? Does that match this right here? No. So this is also false. Here I have my negative x plus y minus z. All right, and if you look here, I didn't change the y or negative z because there was no minus in front of the parentheses. And these two do not match, so this is also false. Next, opposite x is always a negative number. Not always true. Not always true. Okay? Not always true. Okay? So if you look right down here, for these, you're going to have some story problems. All right, 5 through 10. You got to read this graph, read the story problem, and use the graph to be able to answer your questions here, okay? If you need help, work together or call somebody over, all right? If you look on this page again, all right, you have another graph that you need to look at and to answer these questions. 14 through 15, you got the story problem you got to read, all right, and then answer the questions. So that's just going to be something that's going to get you ready for the PSATs, just looking at story problems and being able to answer some of the questions, all right? So work through those if you need help. If you need to have me to help you out and there's nobody there to help you, just kind of come to this section and work on this stuff right here, all right? So again, just to remind you with this, all right, I'll zoom in again. We're doing the opposite. So whenever you see a negative in front of the parentheses now, we got to do the opposite of everything that comes after. So here's my 4b, nothing to do there. Find the opposite of each expression. So we got to do that. Put parentheses around everything. And what we're going to do is we're going to find the opposite. So that's why I'm going to write it like this. So there's a minus in front of everything now. So I'm going to take the opposite of everything inside. The opposite of -3 is positive 3b. The opposite of positive 7 is -7. So there, I just found the opposite. Find the opposite of 6z. Well, positive 6z is now -6z. Positive 4y is -4y. All right? So you're going to do that for the rest of these. Right here, they just want you to simply subtract. So 14b minus 9b, that's 5b. Put the b's with the b's. Before you can subtract 9, you got to rewrite it. 6x, opposite of 4 is -4. Opposite of -3 is positive 3x. All right, put the x's with the x's, I get 9x's. And my number by itself, my constant by itself. All right, so I'll do one more. You got this right here. There's no negative in front, so I'm going to write that as is, 11d plus 4e. But I got a minus in front here, so opposite of -60 is, positive 60 is -60. The opposite of positive 3e is -3e. Now that I took the opposite of everything that came after that negative, I can combine my like terms. 11d minus 60, 5d. 4e minus 3e, 1e. And it's a positive 1e. All right? And then one last time. Let's do one more. This stays the same. 3c minus 4. That stays the same. But I got a minus in front of that parentheses, so I got to do the opposite. The opposite of 2c is -2c. The opposite of -3 is positive 3. All right? So now I'm going to combine my like terms. 3 minus 2c is 1c. -4 plus 3, -1. All right? So you have to change everything that comes after the negative. You got to change all these. Do the opposites. And then you can combine your like terms for your final answer. Do you see this plus sign? I'm just leaving it as is. -3x minus 1 minus 2x minus 3. I don't need to change anything with the plus signs. The plus signs are good to go. I don't need to change anything if there's a plus sign. Okay? It stays as is. I can combine them as is. So don't change the plus signs one. You notice right here? This is just like the last example. Don't have to change these, okay? Now here, there's a negative in front. So I have to take the opposite of everything inside. Okay? There's a negative in front. So I have to take the opposite of everything inside. Opposite of 3m is -3m. Opposite of -5 is +5. So make sure you're doing that, okay? So that's some practice for you. And if you look, as we turn the pages, there's a lot more practice doing exactly all this. The last thing I'm going to try to do with you right here is these tiles. If you look, how many x's do I have? 2 x's. How many negative blocks do I have? 3 negative blocks. How many x's do I have here? 1x. How many positive blocks do I have? 2. Okay? So 2 x's and 1x gives me 3 x's. Negative 3 plus 2 gives me a negative 1. Alright? Just so you can see there, I got my 2 x's minus I got my 1x and my negative 1. Okay? So if I subtract 2 minus 1, I'm left with 1 block. Negative 3 minus negative 1, I'm left with negative 2. But you can look at that as we go. Alright, so this would be 1x minus 2. So we're not going to do too much with tile blocks yet, but it's there for you. So I wanted to cover that just in case. But you're going to go through here and you're going to do what it says. This is find the opposite, take the opposite, okay? And if you need help, call us over and we'll help you out. But you should be working on this. This should take you about 2 days to practice through, okay? Good luck. Let me know if you need help.